Greetings, citizens from the rolling hills of the bluegrass. With the news cycle changing, COVID-19 has run its course for a lot of these places for the now, and the election is still in the distant future. They don't have anything to focus on, so now immigration is returning. And it'll pick up speed, I have no doubt, because they need money from their advertisers. But it brings a very interesting point of history up, in that immigration is a natural phenomenon for humanity. Right? People moving happens. And one thing that's always focused on, especially here in America, is that immigration is always centered around Mexico and below. But there's been great migrations before, and one of importance to this video is the idea of the Irish. The Irish came here, and we have all of the history of how they were suppressed, oppressed, and then integrated and became a core ethnicity in America, giving us many, many things that we kind of take for granted today in our culture. And that already had happened to the Irish, right? We understand that the English went into Ireland and conquered it. And that's where the term beyond the pale comes from, because that was beyond the borders at which the English had control. If you were beyond the pale, you were out in the land of the barbarians. The Irish already understand this immigration. And then you go even further back, and their ancestors, who covered the entirety of Europe for as much as we can see. Where'd they go? Where are the Celts? Well, it's in about 5 or 6 places: Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Brittany in France, and Galicia in Spain. And potentially a little place down in Turkey. So we have 5, 6, 7 places where the people there say, we are the descendants of the Celts. And the thing that I want to point out is these people were white. So this trying to link immigration to a skin tone, to a race, is just modern politics. This happens. Thing is, now we have the ability to recognize it. We have the nation state, which many people say we don't need anymore. We're beyond it. It's an antiquated idea. 1648, Westphalia is no longer necessary. We don't have to worry about it. But yet our history courses are still taught like that. Before 1648 and then after 1648. And you get to decide, at least I did in my undergrad, what history class I was going to take. Well, I took before, because I find the before a little more interesting. After 1648, it's pretty well hammered into you throughout college, throughout high school, elementary school, middle school. But it's the before 1648 that I find so interesting. But back to the Irish, back to the Celts. Where are they? Well, they're in those small places. Where were they? They were all over Europe. They were everywhere. And what happened? Invasion, war, and immigration from outside. That's what happened. And it honestly took hundreds of years, but that was, of course, before the modern era's technology. things happened more slowly. It took time to move people. Now, you can move thousands because of cars and buses instead of ox carts, instead of by horseback or on foot. And many get to the southern border and cross on foot, but they were brought here by modern vehicles. So it can happen a lot quicker. Everything is accelerated. We have an exponent on time. So I point this out because immigration always gets boiled down to this racial component. It's not. It is people seeking economic advantage, right? People seeking a better life. And I can understand that 100%. You look at the American side of the border and you look at the Mexican side of the border, and it is night and day in some places. And I can understand a young Mexican person sitting there looking across the river and going, why can't we have that? Well, that should be an internal question to then where they look at Mexico City and say, what are you doing? Why are we living this way? And just over that river, they're living a better life. So no, I can't blame them for wanting to come here at all. Wouldn't fault them a bit if I was in their position. And the same thing happens with the Celts. Because they're gone. Linguistically, we have smatterings of their culture musically, in art, but linguistically, they are not on the stage. And it could happen very quickly nowadays, and we wouldn't even realize it. It would be so slow that we would blink and miss it. And that's exactly where this immigration is, right? The Celts are gone as a large body of people. Who came in? Germanic tribes. Who came in? The Romans. Right? French is a Roman language. English is a Germanic language. Where are the Celtic languages that are spoken across Europe? Spain, Romantic. But in this very small corner up here are people who speak a totally different language. You talk about Spain and Catalonia. Catalonia speaks a whole nother language from Spanish. They only speak Spanish because that's what's coming from Madrid. And even there, Europe is this giant conglomeration of white people. It's like Africa is this giant conglomeration of black people. And it totally negates all of their individualness. The way we view them. And it's the same thing in Hungary. In Hungary, there for a bit, you thought it was going to be kind of a second Switzerland. And Orban, there for a while, was like, go, man, go. Because Hungary, compared to all other European countries, they're it. They're in a position that the Celts are in. Or were in. Right? If their country is inundated with immigrants, and those immigrants don't integrate, where does Hungary go? Because their language is it. And unfortunately, you have someone like Orban, who may be going back to the old style European dictator, which is very sad because he had a chance to make Hungary give Hungary a nationalist spin without being exclusionary. But I fear that he's going down the path that so many more of history's tyrants tread upon. So it's good to recognize historical trends, right? The Celts were everywhere, and then they're not. Their culture was imitated, integrated into other cultures, but their language died. And it's very important. But you do see where these Celtic nations are finally going, hold on a second. We have something to give the world, right? And the Welsh have been for a long time trying to revitalize the Welsh language. The Irish keep Gaelic in the schools, right? You have these efforts to try to recapture these things that came from invasion, that came from the destruction of a culture. And that draws a parallel to the Indians here in America, Native Americans. The same thing happened to them. And then you have, about 10 years ago, the Lakota Sioux saying, no, we are a nation. We are a people together. And I applaud them for that. Right? Shouldn't we, where people are not free, applaud them? It's so important that where these liberty movements spring up, that we support them, you know. If the Welsh decided tomorrow that we don't want to be a part of Great Britain anymore, go, good. Go. Catalan, actually rise up again and try to do what they did before. Go. Be free. But decide that for yourselves. Right? Decide to be free. And then work to make it happen. Or we could be saying, where are the Americans?